Welcome back to Clash of Cultures. Today I'm going to be giving my top 5 teams who I think are primed to win a national championship this season in 2023. Obviously, as you guys can see, my dad is not here. It's just going to be me today. But if you guys are new around here, please do me a favor. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you guys don't miss an upload. We post every single day. We have a big giveaway coming out. 1,000 subscribers, giving away a signed Heisman jersey. Also, join the Discord as well as the pickem. The link is in the descriptions below. With that being said, let's get right into the list. At number 5, I have Florida State. I think Florida State is the 5th best team, in my opinion, if we're talking about title odds. Reason being, they still have to travel to Clemson to win that game. That is not a cakewalk of a game. Clemson has only lost 3 times in Death Valley in the last 10 years. So I think they have their work cut out for them in that game alone. I believe they still have to play Duke. They still have to play Florida. I think they play North Carolina. So Florida State still has some formidable opponents to go against this year. Obviously, you have, like I said, Duke, you have Clemson, you have Florida, you have Miami. So there's still a lot of games to be played for this Florida State team. We haven't seen Florida State really dominate like they did against LSU in a long time. Can they sustain that? Can they keep that going? Has yet to be seen. Obviously, with Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, that gives a lot of help to Jordan Travis as well as Trey Benson. The defense looked really good against LSU as well, slowing down the receiving corps of LSU as well as that run game. So I'm excited to see how good this team looks against a team like Clemson. Obviously, I'm a Clemson fan, so I'm going to be rooting for my team against them. But it is an away game for Florida State. That game is next week. So that's going to be their next tough opponent. But I think even if they lose that game to Clemson, they can still avenge that loss in the ACC title game. That's why I have them number 5. But I don't think Florida State finishes the regular season unbeaten, you guys. I don't think that happens. But they are the 5th ranked team on Steven's list, on my list, for national championship contenders. At number 4, this is where I have USC. I think USC has to be on this list. The reason being, they have the reigning Heisman winner who's looked absolutely stellar in his first 2 performances. Obviously, it's against lower talent in Stanford, San Jose State, and I think they played one other game if I'm not mistaken. Stanford, San Jose State, and Nevada. He looked good in all 3 of those games. He plays Arizona State and then Colorado next week. And then Notre Dame, Utah, Washington, Oregon, UCLA. So the back end of the schedule is really loaded. So we're going to be able to see how good USC is. Again, I don't think USC goes undefeated, you guys. I don't think any Pac-12 team goes undefeated. But I think if they're able to go 11-1, win the Pac-12, they could get in the playoffs. It's going to be very hard for them to do that. And again, this is my top 5 based on right now. So this is my top 5 based on right now. I'm not going to say based on projections or predictions. Based on what I've seen right now, this is my top 5. Coming in at number 3, this is where I have Texas. Those of you guys know I'm not a big Texas believer. I don't think Texas is the best team in the country, but I think they're a top 4 team in the country, especially after a 10-point win over Alabama. So very, very interested to see how the season ends. I do have Oklahoma winning the Big 12, but with how they looked against Alabama, I wouldn't be surprised if Texas ran the table out there. Excuse me. Coming down a little cold, guys. Bear with me. But I do think Texas is, if they're able to run the table, they're obviously in the playoffs, and they're big time players for the national championship. So they are my number 3 team as of right now in my championship quality level teams. They've shown they can beat a Nick Saban led team, which is, in my opinion, shown that you can beat anybody in the country. So they had to be on this list. That them not on the list, I'd be doing a disservice to the college football world by saying they're not a top 5 team to win a national championship this year. So again, I had Florida State at 5, USC at 4, Texas at 3. At number 2, this is where I have Georgia, y'all. Georgia, I may get some hate for this, but it's hard because Georgia has looked good against really bad teams. Team like UT Martin and Ball State. But in those first quarters of those games, they started really slow, guys. I think if you're going against a team with a pulse and that team is able to put up, a touchdown or 2 in that first quarter, you're playing catch up. It's a completely different ball game. We're going to find out real soon this week, 3 days from now, how they look against South Carolina. UNC beat South Carolina by 2 touchdowns. I need Georgia to win this game. I need them to cover the spread. The spread is at 28. I think if they don't cover the spread, it's going to look – I'm not going to say it's going to look bad, but it's going to look concerning. especially if it's a 35-27 type game or 35-24 type game. Should even a 35-21 type game. We're talking about the back-to-back national champions. They need to win this game big. It's a statement for them, statement week for them, just to kind of show everybody, yeah, we are still the Bulldogs. We are still Georgia. We're still a force to be reckoned with. But I have them at number 2, guys. At number 1, again, you guys can call me crazy. You guys can call me, whatever you want to call me. But at number 1, this is where I have Michigan. Again, I've been saying this from the jump. To me, Michigan is the most complete team in all of college football. Yes, they played against lower opponents as well, but they won 30-3 against ECU and 35-7 against UNLV. Obviously, in the Michigan ECU game, the score at halftime, let me pull it up for you guys. 1 second. The score at halftime in the UNLV game was 21-0, and then the score at the ECU game at halftime was 23-0. So before you guys say, well, they struggled against lower opponents as well, I think ECU and UNLV are both better teams than Ball State and UT Martin. So before Georgia fans try to butcher me and say that, I think if not, both the teams are better than UT Martin at least. And in the Georgia games, they were only up by 7 or 10 or, whatever the case may be at the end of the first quarter. So I really like Michigan's team, the most complete team in the country. Oh, excuse me. The most complete team in the country, in my opinion. JJ McCarthy is playing some of the best football. I think he has the best completion percentage in all of college football. He's not asked to do much. You have 2 of the best running backs in college football, one of the best defenses. They play Bowling Green this week. Another reason why I have them on this list at number 1 so high, they are going to be, 9-0 heading into that Penn State game. They're not going to be tested against anybody on the schedule. Their only other test is Nebraska, and Nebraska lost to Minnesota and Colorado. They play Michigan State, which is a rivalry, but they just fired their coach, so I'm sure that game is not going to be much. And then a team like Minnesota. Again, don't really know how that's going to look, but this team's going to be 9-0 heading into the Penn State game. I feel like that's a lock. I feel like Michigan is pretty much a lock for a New Year's Six bowl at this point. Even if they were to go, 11-1, they're getting into a New Year's Six bowl game. So I think Michigan, to me, not only has the easiest path to the playoffs, but I think they are the most complete team, and that is why I have them at number 1. Georgia still has to play Tennessee and then play whoever comes out of the SEC, the other side of the SEC. So you still have to beat a team like Tennessee. You still got to beat a team like Ole Miss, and then you're going to have to beat a team like LSU or Alabama. So when I look at Michigan, you have to beat Penn State and then Ohio State, but then you probably will have to beat a team like Wisconsin or Iowa. So I just think Michigan's road to get to a national championship is a lot easier than anybody else's road in all of college football. It's an easier road than Ohio State because Ohio State plays Notre Dame, Penn State, and Michigan. So they have a tougher out-of-conference schedule than Michigan does. So Michigan has always been my favorite since the previews. I have them winning it all this year, and I'm going to keep rocking with them for now because, they're outscoring opponents 65-10 in the first 2 games. And really, they could probably score more than that. But we'll see against Bowling Green. They're a 40-point favorite. And then Rutgers, and then obviously Nebraska. But I really like Michigan's team. One of the most complete teams, like I said. So that's going to wrap up my top 5. So I had, again, Florida State at 5, USC at 4, Texas at 3, Georgia at 2, Michigan at 1. Those of you guys are going to ask me, well, what about Ohio State? Well, what about Alabama? Well, what about Washington? What are some other teams I'm missing? What about Notre Dame? I think those teams are right on the outside. I can only pick 5 teams, guys. So I think they're right on the outside. I like these 5 teams a little bit more, and based on what they've done and their schedule upcoming, I feel like they have the best chance to do it. So that's why I have this 5. Of course, Alabama still has a chance. They were in the table and beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. They're probably the favorites for the national championship. But with how shaky they looked with Jalen Milroe, it's hard to say that team is going to win the national championship based on what we saw. A team like LSU, could they make it to the national championship? Of course. But with how they looked against Florida State, I feel like it's very unlikely they're able to run the table in the SEC. With a team like Clemson, they lost to Duke. But if they were to run the table, beat Florida State, beat Notre Dame, beat UNC, beat South Carolina, and then beat Florida State again in the ACC title game, could they make it? Yes. But another team that did not look good in week 1 or week 2. So fans of teams who are telling me, well, what about Notre Dame or what about this or that? It's going to be a long season. A lot of these teams haven't played, top end talent yet. And you can say the same thing for Georgia, Michigan, but Georgia and Michigan have already been at the top of my list. Notre Dame, in my opinion, was like the number 13 or 14 team heading into the year. So wins against NC State, Tennessee State, and Navy are not going to propel them into the top 5 for me. Now, obviously, Georgia was number 1 for me at the beginning of the year. So, taking care of business against UNLV and UT Martin, they took care of business. So I'm going to keep them up there. So those of you guys who, have that gripe with my list, it's more so if you played lower teams and you're already at the top, you took care of business against who you played against. I can't fault you for that. But I can't move people up when they're only beating teams that, they were supposed to beat. Like Texas, they were not in my top 10. They beat a top 3 team in Alabama. So now they're number 3 to me. So I feel like I'm very consistent across the board with my rankings. And it kind of goes hand in hand with my rankings that I made a couple days back. But I'm really excited to see how the season shakes out. Today's Wednesday. Obviously, this week there's not any big matchups. I'm looking forward to watching college football nonetheless. I really hope you guys are enjoying the channel, the content we're pushing out. Live show is going to be 9 p.m. Eastern this Friday in 2 days, 9 p.m. Eastern. Please show up. Tell a friend to bring a friend. Let's try to get 25 to 30 people in the live stream this week just to preview and predict this week's games. It's been super fun. Help us get to that 1,000 subscriber mark so we can give away that signed Heisman jersey for you guys. We've had it for about 2 weeks now. Really want to give that to a loyal fan of ours, somebody who's been rocking with us. It's been super fun. But we will see you guys tomorrow at the show. Don't forget to join the Discord and join the Pick'em. But we will see you guys tomorrow's episode. Peace out.